Hello, everyone. I'll give everyone a moment to connect to sound really quickly. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1270th New Social Environment. I'm Joshua, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Agosto Machado and CJ Salapare. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. A singular figure, Agosto Machado is a Chinese-Spanish-Filipino-American performance artist, activist, archivist, muse, caretaker, and friend to countless celebrated and underground visual and performing artists. He has been a vital participant and witness to cultural and creative life in New York since the early 60s, from art, theater, performance, and film to social and political counterculture and the dawn of the gay liberation movement. As part of a cohort of queer revolutionaries, Machado participated in the Stonewall Rebellion. Our host today is CJ Salapare, who is a research associate at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Prior to that, he was a curatorial assistant at the Whitney Museum of American Art, where he worked on Edges of Ailey. His research spans the fields of Filipino diaspora, art historical method, and performance studies. He has contributed essays and interviews for Artist Space, Barnier, the Hammer Museum, the 2024 Venice Biennale, and the Whitney Museum of American Art, and we are lucky to have him as a contributor to the Brooklyn Rail. And with that, I will now pass it over to CJ.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Chloe and Magley and everyone at the Rail. Thank you, everyone, for showing up on a Tuesday afternoon. Hopefully, we find a way to brighten this sort of dreary gray day. And thanks, first and foremost, to Augusto for being with us today to speak about this illuminating and really revelatory practice and the show that he currently has up at Gordon Robichaux. I think as a starting point, Augusto, how are you today? How are you? Where are you at? How are you feeling? What's occupying your mind at this present moment?
Well, I'm very excited about this. This is a new technology, and I think your term is broadcast or something or other, but it's new to me. I'm from the last century, and as a surviving dinosaur, I hope I could share some information and trivia.
You'll share a lot of tidbits and gems tonight, this afternoon, Augusto, that's for sure. I think as a starting point, though, for this show, for the people who I think haven't yet been able to see it or who won't be able to see it because they're tuning in from California or wherever, I was wondering if you could give a kind of broad overview of the show, how it came to be, some of the specific works that you made for this show, and some of the kind of organizing principles or the motivations that kind of occupied you as you were making these works.
Oh dear. Was that one question? And well, I'm really a hoarder. And people tell me I'm supposed to use the term archivist, but things just happen and come together. And on the screen now is my friend Thomas Flanagan Schmidt, and it's intergenerational in my work. I include various people that are part of my life. And these pieces are from the 60s, and he's alive and well. We talk almost every day, and he's still working, doing marvelous work.
Great. I know that the show is a kind of it's an assembly of artworks that are from your personal collection by your friends, right? The people who make up your community, but also your own artworks, right? Can you talk more about this kind of composite, or as you put it, hoarding method or archival method behind some of the works? I think, Josh, if we could skip to, let's say, this piece, the Queen's Shrine.
Well, there's so many components to this piece, including that fringe on top was part of a set that Thomas Flanagan Smith made for us at La Mama. And then this is actually a Mother Flawless Sabrina sort of shrine, documenting part of the journey and the interaction of various of our community through the decades. It has so many little compartments.
And is there a kind of a detail, Josh, of the actual altar, the tabletop? Could you talk more about all of the pieces? I guess just that you gather or assemble on these, Augusto. I think maybe if we zoom out a little bit, right? So many of these works are altars or shrines. They take on this kind of devotional or memorializing function. What why did you decide to kind of create in this mode? And two, who are some of the people, right? Some of your kind of closest mentors or friends or lovers who ended up becoming the subjects of these?
Oh, first of all, no lovers are in any of my work. I'm very discreet. And that the assemblage of many intergenerational, on one of my little pins in the front is Divine when she did Neon Women here on Upper Broadway. And there's Flawless Sabrina Beck. And John Flowers of the Cockettes is the poster behind. And the right side is Andy Warhol in drag. And to the left is a photo by Bob Gruen that he took of Jackie Curtis and our group of at rehearsal at the Great Jones rehearsal loft from La Mama. And it's different time periods that somehow come together, merging memories and experiences. And the jewelry is worn by different queens. And we could get lost in the trivia as we go through. Oh dear.
You want to talk about this early self-portrait, Augusto?
Yes, this is from 1966, and this survived because when I was in San Francisco, I was influenced by something called the Bay Area figurative painters, and I sort of did this self-portrait. And when I was coming back to New York, I looked at all my work, and I decided I'm not a painter. So I thought I burned everything, but this was in a different portfolio, so it survives. And you can see why I gave up painting in '66 and moved on to something else.
And I think an interesting kind of something that's interesting in dialogue with this is the Anna May Wong altar, and specifically, I think something that came directly from you, Augusto. I was wondering if you could talk about that piece.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I've always wanted to honor Anna May Wong, and thanks to the gallery, Sam and Jacob, it came together. And in my early Street Queen days, my nickname was, I chose the only Asian face that I could attach to was Anna May Wong Jr. And so I was that. That's what I called myself for a while. And that it really was wonderful that it happened, that I had all these components that came together, plus 3 bound foot shoes that I got in the '60s at the sales in Chinatown, where their great grandmothers wore them, and that they had to sell them due to economics. And so, at least in this shrine, is photos with Anna May Wong. She had to go to Europe to continue the work, but all these little portraits and the bound foot shoes and photographs of women who had twisted feet and so forth. There's endless stories that, if we zero in, that fall into a strange, a great deal of trivia.
Oh yeah. I mean, the one that I'm really keen on kind of fixating on or staying with at the moment is the ponytail. Whose ponytail
Oh,
is that, Augusto?
oh, I know it sounds a little strange, but that was my ponytail in 1966 when I was doing a transition. I cut my hair when I went to San Francisco, but I still had it down to my shoulders. Why it stayed in the archive, that's a pretentious word. I mean, why it stayed in my hoarding, it was in some shoebox and it came out at that time. There's a lot of things that just happenstance, that you open a box and in a box is another box. And in these little things as, oh, what is this? And it's always a surprise. And somehow this came together. And I'm so happy with all the little tidbits and the postcards from San Francisco, Chinatown from an earlier period, and New York, and little embroideries. And this iron symbolizes what Asians did with laundries and ironing and so forth.
Yeah, I think that there's something really important about this kind of shift from San Francisco to New York, right? And how moving to New York for you really opened up a new set of worlds, and introduced you to a kind of whole cast of characters, right? A little motley crew, if you will. I was wondering if you could talk more about that transition and some of the people, right, who ended up taking you in, who ended up shaping your sense of self, right? So we have this self-portrait that is your own kind of representation, but so often you use other people become the mirror for you. Other people focalize your sense of self, right? Which is one of the beautiful parts of your practice. Could you talk more about, I think, the early days of New York, especially, in terms of the Stonewall uprisings? You mentioned Ellen Stewart. You mentioned, I believe, Marsha Johnson, et cetera. Who are some of these people, for those who are intimately familiar, but also those who are not?
Well, I was an orphan. I grew up here in New York in the edges of Hell's Kitchen, and then near Needle Point on 72nd Street and Broadway. And that just learning from street queens of how to survive. And in life, you learn not only through your own experiences, from the other sisters of what experiences they went through, where not to go, what places are raided, which has soup kitchens, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole nature of being on the streets and in rooming houses is that there's a whole subculture that I grew up with that I thought was very, very natural. And that one of the survival things you learn on the street is in winter, where do you go? You go to a New York public library. There are magazines to look at and what have you. And that if you needed a little vacation from New York during a blizzard, when New York really had blizzards, is that you go to Bellevue and tell the people, I'm feeling suicidal. I need help. And then you get some shelter. But so many queens did that. You didn't get a room, but you got maybe a Thorazine cocktail, and you sat up and you met the most interesting people and heard life stories that are better than anything you could read. And I think, oh boy, what a life. And I didn't think of myself as deprived. The gratitude of knowing street people on how to get by and function is like, wow, not everybody has this opportunity. And so I'm just grateful for all of this, no matter what the journey taught me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's so beautiful, Augusto. I think there's I guess like the follow-up question I want to ask is, what were the most compelling parts of these stories of a life and a life's work that you heard? What were some of the things, especially in terms of your own kind of self-fashioning, where you were like, oh, this is an example, right? This is a kind of model for me. This is how I want to exist in the world, in spite of all of these other ways of being.
Well, concurrently of being a street queen is the counterculture was exploding here in New York, plus gay rights and anti-war things, is that it was such a gift to be down in Greenwich Village with happenings and talks in Washington Square Park with different protests, music, and what have you. But our lives, I'm talking about our gay community, is that on little theaters like the Chino, or self-expression and dance and sound and music at the Judson Memorial Church, and Ellen Stewart having at La Mama in the East Village, which gave entree to all of us the exposure of, you are part of the community. You have every right to have a booking and express whatever your art is. And so people did, and there was such abundance. Is It's quite amazing, which parallels the last bloom of downtown was the Pyramid Club. And when word said, oh, there's going to be a drag queen bar, but they're over on Avenue A. And people were saying, oh, no, East Village, Avenue A, you won't even survive or live if you get there. Avenue A was be afraid. Avenue B, beware. Avenue C, you're crazy. Avenue D, you're dead. And so it happened, and Ethel Eichelberger and I were very fortunate to start performing at the Pyramid Club. And of course, we met John Jesrin and John Kelly and all these, Hattie, and all these amazing people who came at the right time and place. And we're two queens from Atlanta, RuPaul and Lady Bunny. They came up and they love the danger and the excitement of Avenue A and what was happening in the East Village. And then suddenly they were going back to Atlanta. And I said, oh, is it too much for you? And they said, no, we're going home to pack. We're coming back. This is what's happening. And also around there with the cheap rents around Tompkins Square Park, there were all these empty stores. And with all the abundance of artists, you could rent for $150 or $200 a month a storefront. That meant you and your friends could have a gallery show. And everyone had the opportunity to be exposed and show what their expression is. And so it was such an abundant time. Anybody who wanted to do anything, failure is not trying. And some people said, well, I've never written a play. Well, why don't you try it? And there's all these people who want to perform and do sets and costume and sound to be part of a community to express themselves. And boom, the explosion of all sorts of arts and things. Unfortunately, the goose with the golden egg. Landlords came into these storefronts and saw these $100 prices, $200, $300, and they're saying, you're only paying $150, $200 rent a month, and you're selling, oh, there's a couple of $1,000s worth of art. They didn't know it wasn't, they weren't selling. That was just an asking price, a wish price. And little by little, they start raising the rents, and the art galleries had to close. But for that brief time of a couple of years, it was the birth and bloom, an abundance of wonderful art and expression. And of course, Lady Bunny started Woodstock, and it got so big, it became larger than life, and then they had to move it to the West Side and what have you. But God bless Lady Bunny, who's still going strong. When she takes a taxi, she has to have these big hat boxes that have an abundance of her wig. And that it's amazing to see her hail a taxi, and they can't believe, what is all this luggage? But it isn't luggage, it's wigs. And she's still DJing around the world and what have you. And she phoned me the other day. She was in London, and I thought, gee whiz. I mean, how did she travel on an airplane with all those wig boxes?
Well, I mean, Augusto, something that you've, in terms of all of these stories, but also in that walk down memory lane, right? Something that you kept repeating over and over is the sense of abundance. And I really want to stay with that for a second, both in terms of, I think, abundance in terms of a largesse or excess, right? But also in terms of something to give or share. And I think a kind of an abundance that leads to or results in a kind of generosity, right? What is your relationship with this notion of abundance, and how do you see it playing out, not just in terms of your life and your kind of life's philosophy, but also in terms of these works, right? These altars and shrines have this kind of creative efflorescence. It is just an outpouring of so many beautiful parts and elements, right? What is your relationship to this idea of abundance?
Well, the abundance of friendship and caring through the long journey is all these people contributed to much of the art in our lives, and we shared, and that it's memorializing all the talented people that were part of our larger community. And then we had the fear and ignorance of AIDS, and that we continued through. And so in my shrines, is that this is, even if it's a snapshot or a ring that someone wore or what have you, this is a remembrance of our community that has given a legacy to so many people who don't know them individually, but collectively they contributed to our foundation of the full expression of what is seen today.
Yeah, and I think in terms of that sense of not being able to fully remember the individual, the part or the thing that I kind of cling on to is this idea of the fragment, right? The fragment and how it can stand in for a whole or a world. I find this appears or presents itself so beautifully in the works, right? I guess we were talking about this kind of heyday, this kind of queer renaissance in the East Village. I was wondering if you could talk more about your time during the AIDS kind of crisis, both in terms of, I think, your artistic practice, but also I think in terms of, we talk so much about this idea of helping, right? Of being kind of bedside with people, of really being a kind of structure of support for them. What did that look like for you on the day-to-day, Agosto?
Well, it goes back to being a street queen, people who gave you friendship and respect and in a community. And as life went on through the gay rights and other movement, it was just part of who your friends are, what projects we're sharing together. And then with the AIDS epidemic, which overwhelmed so many people, and there was such fear and ignorance, as I've mentioned, but these are people of our community, and they deserve help and respect, and that there was really no one helping, and there was all different parts of our community were collecting meds, trying to lobby for funding and so forth, and all I am really able to do was to visit and help friends as much I could with great discretion, because there was such fear about things. And one of the unfortunate things is that word got out that I was helping people, and that because of the ignorance is I had to stop going to gay bars, because when I walked in, people would glance and sort of move away. And I thought, oh dear, the ignorance is they didn't know how AIDS was really contracted, but I was helping people going into their apartment, helping them to doctors and what have you. But it was all very secretive, I thought, but people saw me helping people on the street or trying to get a cab for them. And they were in such a condition that they knew they weren't well. And so there was a contingent of people that we had to keep a sort of a sub rosa, very secret, and the delicacy of information. But it boggles the mind to know that people who lived in the same tenement, bathtub in the kitchen, or on the same blocks, blocked off is they could not look in on a friend. And, or as some of them said, do you know, it's a miracle, Augusto, a miracle. And I said, what? And they'd say, I'm invisible. Before, when I used to walk down the street as best I could, people would cross the street or walk into a store, but now they walk right past me. And it's the understanding that people couldn't deal with it. I mean, a lot of people couldn't. And that this ignorance really boggled my mind. And going in and out of hospitals was second nature, because these are your friends. These are the people who paid dues with. These are people you did sit-ins with and marched with. And yet people were able to just cut them out of their life. didn't understand then, and I don't quite understand now. The fear and ignorance is that you could be needing of help, and there should be people to help you. Is what you do for other return.
Oh, I mean, this I think that brings like so many profound layers to this. I think what we often call a relationship between art and activism, right? But I think that kind of those facets of tenderness or kind of a kind of humanity, for lack of a better term, feel like it's felt so palpably as you talked about these kind of relationships, you know, providing help, providing support when no one else would, Augusto. I think like it seems like so much of your kind of life and work has been about not just decentering, but showing how this idea of the kind of the individual or the isolation are kind of fictions unto themselves, right? How we always exist in relation, how we always exist in interdependence. I think one question I have is how you always talk about people or you helping and being of service to other people. What has it been like for other people to be of help, of kind of community, of to be a friends with you, right? How have they kind of imprinted themselves onto your sense of being?
Well, the community, our chosen family, as we say, is that there are people who are still, I see now and then, I'm a surviving dinosaur, and there are other people of that ilk, and that we do share sensibilities and wonderful warm memories, even though it was tragic during the time of AIDS, is that we did the best we could, and that we have wonderful memories and love and affection that people missed out on out of fear of going to visit people in the hospital or in their homes or helping clear up their apartments. And one side note is one of the things people in the community is that one of the requests was when people, there wasn't a very good meds, that they said, please, before my family or what, if I have family or what have you come, dispose of the porn and the toy box. And we can smile about that. But there were families who I was like a caregiver, and they would come and they said, "What did you steal? This whole shelf, and next to his bedstead, it's empty. And next to the TV, there are 3 shelves missing. What did you take? What is there?" And they could not understand, and I couldn't verbalize it. That was their collection of porn, and there were things in their nightstand were toys and so forth, and the stains on the nightstand. Well, that was poppers that stained the nightstand, and of course I cleaned that up as best I could. But it brings a little smile because the lack of experience of them knowing is that if their gay son was gay, don't you think there would be things he didn't want you to ever see, and to dispose of them? And really trying to dispose, discreetly wrapping dildos and so forth, not to be graphic, and wrapping them many times and putting them in shopping bags and double wrapping, and then walking out of the neighborhood and depositing them in a trash can. Hopefully, the people who are looking for cans would not go into that bag because of the shape. But the things to smile at and remember with a bit of humor, but it is still very sad and tragic.
Yeah. And like the kind of I guess I just want to turn to one of those shrines that are made on those bookshelves, right? Joshua, if we can go to that, because I think in hearing about this empty shelf, Augusto, I couldn't help but think of this abundance, this kind of almost sense of repair or recuperation with seeing these shrines, right? It's like you just mentioned this story about a kind of absence, and yet we have this profound and kind of almost just truly vibrant or kind of exhilarating sense of presence here. Is that something that you kind of think about or that comes to mind as you make these altars or shrines to people?
Well, yes, I made several shrines, and that this one particularly, I have 48 obituaries in this particular shrine, and many mementos and jewelry and rings and snapshots and uh, grave rubbings and so forth, that there's such an abundance and so much care and love of all these people that they had to have a face and a value and acknowledgement, and for generations to be able to see it collectively, that all these people contribute to the gifts and freedom we have now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, like if you had to hazard a guess for all of, when you were in these kind of spaces and communities of people just, making and experimenting and seeing what sticks, like what do you think were their motivations for making? I asked this, I think as a preamble, is so many people think of the artist in terms of the kind of individual, right? Trying to get or to kind of summon this singular vision. But that doesn't seem like it was the case at all in so many of these communities. Like to realize a vision, you needed to have someone else. You needed to have a stagehand. You needed to kind of riff off with another friend. You needed them to hold the camera, etc. Like how much of the motivation for people to create was one of kind of necessity, was one of kind of community or a desire to connect? How much of it was something that we, I think, can call pejoratively or perhaps controversially aesthetic, right?
Yes. Well, individually and collectively during the counterculture time, everyone was doing the honesty of self-expression that was not available to them wherever they came from, and was not accessible to other parts of, let's say, Broadway. We were doing our stories, our lives, our music, song, dance, and happenings, and that it was all very valid individually. For us downtown, collectively, we were each doing purely what we wanted to do. This is our life, this is our expression, and the freedom and daring to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, these existed or these kind of took place in a number of spaces, right? You've already invoked them through the conversation, the street, the theater, all of these storefronts, etc. I was wondering, like, what are the places that feel most kind of rich in terms of memory, or the places that you remember with the most fondness, where you felt like the creative juices were really flowing? Was it when you were on stage or elsewhere?
Oh, why? Oh, I think of myself that way, but Christopher Street,
Mhm.
from Sheridan Square down, that Washington Square Park, and any number of places where we used to walk or hang out, the upper, well, better class queens or the people who dress better and cruise would be Greenwich Avenue of the upper part of Christopher Street, and the Women's House of Detention was there, where there's a lovely park now. And going west, there were places to have coffee and little restaurants and things. But the lower end of Christopher, it got more working class art, or even below where Path is cheap places to eat and gather and laugh and talk and dish and exchange lots of tidbits of information.
Yeah. And I mean, like now, I guess now at this moment, right, in 2025, when the kind of, I guess, New York exists in such a different way in so many cases, right? Where do you still find those kind of pockets of memory, or those places that are still kind of alive and well? Like what does it mean to try and kind of bring those two or merge those worlds or those cities together? Like how does the New York of now square with the New York that you kind of remembered and lived through?
Well, intergenerationally it's fading memories, because the whole West Village it's so expensive. And all the rooming houses that used to go all the way to the river are now townhouses that sell for 12, 15, 18 million dollars. So the demographic of the populace is so much different, is that it's a different place and a different time, but we have our memories and so forth. But sometimes I walk across, there used to be an elevated, ugly West Side highway that blocked off. And now with the sex piers gone, and you see the little pilings of things, the transition, I mean, a whole generation of people, people with prams and children and nannies and joggers, and also healthy, and people walking their dogs. And it's a whole other time. And I feel that, well, this could be in some other city in America, but it's not the place that we sort of survived on. It's gone, except what's in our memory. And now and then when I take walks down to the Hudson River Park now, and I see older people, like perhaps older queens, especially of color, I go up and ask, were you part of our community way back when no one would walk along here and it was unsafe and dirty, but it was ours? And now and then they say, well, I'm very old now, but we had fun then. It was our life and our outlet, and we had a voice. And they could play the early boom boxes, and we could dance, and the West Side Highway sort of divided. And so we had a voice and time to express ourselves. And with the sex piers and the art is that was a special time and place, and real estate and construction and the city let us destroy the piers because they had the master plan that all that community and land would be very valuable once it was destroyed. And glass towers, I don't know why people would spend 10, 12 million dollars. The highway is right there, and the vibration and the smell. But very rich people have bought those condo co-op places, and it's in wonderment. Yes, they get a view of Jersey at sunset, but well, those kind of rich people don't really interact and, I guess, walk the way we do. But it's another time and sensibility, and I'm very gratified that so much has happened within our time and our community and our generation, that thank you for giving me time and space to share this. Hopefully some thoughts or words I presented would let people have a little insight in what happened before.
I mean, Augusto, so much of this is like, I mean, just hearing every kind of memory you recount, you know, I at least am filled with a sense of revelation, right? Especially as I walk some of these New York streets, like the meatpacking district. I'm just like, oh my God, like, what is this establishment, right? We're like walking across
stores.
Exactly.
That I wouldn't feel comfortable walking in because I could never afford any of those things.
Yeah, exactly. You know, same. And it's just like, I think the question I have though is, you know, you're still walking around New York, you're still experiencing everything, right? You still are carrying that with you. When you walk around the city, you know, especially like in the East Village, etc., do you find that there are certain pockets or glimmers of that kind of quote unquote previous way of existing? Do you think that there are some, what are the ways that that persists as you kind of navigate the city anew? You know, when does memory lane become present day?
Well, with the economy and so forth, there's so many empty storefronts that were temporarily the weed stores, and now they're empty. But the scale of the East Village is still sort of there. But places on St. Mark's, it's very Asian restaurants now. And Gem Spa was there for over 30 years, and Fillmore East is not there anymore. But things that were, I sort of remember, but change is change. And I'm not one of those people who say, oh, I wish we still had that and that. No, change is change, and each generation experiences what they're supposed to experience and contribute. So all of you younger people there, please do your own thing and commit. And if you don't try, you don't know. And Brooklyn is where it's happening. All the younger people, under 50 or 40, and they're saying, Brooklyn is amazing. And God bless all the younger, brave people who moved out there, who live there, work there, and do their art there, because there's like 30 alternative space. You have dance, you have the opera. And there was a time from Flatbush and where the basketball place is, Barclays Center, is that you looked all the way down Flatbush, and it was dark and dingy and dangerous. Now it's so well lit. I mean, I walked all the way to Junior's for a piece of cheesecake, and that there's life on the street, excitement, energy, food trucks. And I think this is another time for Brooklyn, and it's happening, and enjoy it, because you don't know what real estate and construction's going to think up next. And the price is that, do you have to move? Well, no, let's not think about leaving New York City. You're here, God bless you, for the next 3 or 4 decades, and you'll leave your mark.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, what are the parts of New York that you love the most, Augusto? Like, what sticks in your mind as you kind of think of New York and all of its flux and changes?
Well, with fading memory, the gratitude of our time, but change is change. And Times Square is so different. And all the places of Hell's Kitchen used to be working class. And Lincoln Center, I saw the destruction of the community there. But nothing stays the same. And all of you are of a time and place to express, do your own thing, and you have ideals and projects and power and interest that you're doing it, and you're changing society, all for the better, and more power to you.
I hope so, Augusto. You know, I think it's that's sort of the challenge at hand, right? How to make a life's work a certain kind of vantage. I think if it's all right, I really want to return to the exhibition, right? You've mapped out this larger world of New York, but within these altars and shrines and the show at Gordon Robichaux, you know, like you've really created these models or kind of these metonyms for them. I think one thing I really want to talk about is the sense of you being in the gallery, right, throughout the run of show, and people, fellow travelers, people from your past literally walking in and surprising you, right? What has that been like, kind of being in that space and sort of modeling that at a different scale?
Well, it was such a gift. And out of perverse curiosity, I'm here, 18 hours a weekend, is that I never know who's going to find their way into the gallery. And I give continual tours, but so many different generations. They're young high schoolers who have no idea, not that they should. They're experiencing life on modern gadgets and things, and they are curious. What does this all mean? And I encourage them is that you can do this installation too. You probably do it at home in your closet or what have you. Just put it in the context and say, oh, this is art. And somebody's going to believe it. First of all, you have to.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's like I think what kind of gets spoken about in art parlance or art speak as kind of experimentalism is something else. It's like both an experiment, it's like an earnest experiment, right? Just to say, like, what is this? You know, like, what am I making? And then letting all the meaning come after. Like I guess like over the run of the show, Augusto, like who else has been visiting you, right? In terms of the friends and the communities that you've kind of made throughout the years. Have there been any surprises? Have there
Oh,
been
yes, thank you for asking. Yesterday, no, the day before, Vaginal Davis, um, who has this wonderful show on at PS1, came and we had a glorious time. He's international, I think, one of the biggest art stars in Berlin now. He's originally from Los Angeles. And it was such a gift. And he brought some German people contingent, and that there's so much happening in New York. One group was going to the Leslie Lohman for the David Wojnarowicz, and Vaginal was going to Jack Pearson's gallery for his opening. I didn't even know he was having an opening. But the fabulous thing about New York is so much is happening, so much is being expressed, so much is you're able to learn and be gratified for, is that I can't be young anymore, not that I want to, is that the choices you have on any given night, there's 5 or 6 things culturally that you benefit from, but you're only one person. You can't do all that. And the abundance is a little frustrating, but the choices are here all over New York City. And it's a blessed time, even though the challenges of what's happening in the outside world, we have to focus and keep ourselves going.
I mean, I think that's just such a beautiful note to end this on, Augusto. I think what I thought would just be a kind of methodical kind of march through the show ended up turning into so many other things, right? Like such what you call trivia are like kind of little gemstones for me. So do you have anything else that you'd like to say before we open things up to Q&A?
Oh no, I think I've said too much. I'm ready for whatever someone wants to ask.
You've not said enough, Augusto. We can listen to you.
Joshua, are you sending little questions out?
Yes, so we are going to turn to our audience Q&A now. I have a couple questions here, but if you're in the audience and you have any questions for Augusto, please, Magli just pasted a link in the chat where you can submit your questions online. Our first question today comes from Kirsten, and Kirsten asks, could Augusto talk more about taking people's leavings to the Lincoln Center Library?
Lincoln Center Library. What is that in reference to? I don't know. Can you give me a clue?
Kirsten, would you like to ask that question? Here, I'm asked that.
Augusto, I thought you were taking people's things when you were cleaning
Harrison, oh, God bless you. We
Hi.
live in the same building. I used to pick up her mail. Oh, she's a great writer. She's a great writer. And she lives in Athens now and is very brave because there's a great community in the Hudson River. Of course, it's on the other side at Hudson, but there's so much art happening on each side. God bless you. Oh, it was wonderful seeing you wherever we saw each other. Where was it?
the Wojnarowicz.
David Boney, of course.
Yes,
Of
yes,
course.
yes.
Clues now and then.
I'm a visitor in somebody else's house.
Oh, it looks
It's just
grand.
me and my computer. I had the impression that when you were cleaning out people's houses, you would take whatever you could to Lincoln Center Library to contribute to their
Archives, yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Well, thank
yes,
you.
yeah. And also, I think I was so aware of how you were nursing people all through the 80s. I was so aware of that. And I mean, and then I had my chance, and I really look at it as you do, as it was kind of a sacred opportunity. It was horrible when I found out that my closest friend was dying, Daniel.
Oh, yes.
It was also kind of this extreme privilege, and he lived for another year and a half, and all of those moments became really, really sacred.
But you're going to write about it and share it and enrich other generations because you do have the gift.
Thank you, Augusta. So could you talk about Lincoln Center? About your taking the pieces up. I think that was an important thing. And then I'm going to mute again if I can figure out.
That's one of the things I did surreptitiously, because you're not supposed to remove things from other people's apartment, but it was so necessary in some cases that this stuff belongs to Lincoln Center for future generations to know, which includes scripts and programs and what have you from a different time. And unfortunately, that all of us experienced during this time is I'm an old queen, and if I died, all of this would end up in a dumpster. And we've seen it throughout the communities in Alphabet Land. Older people die, they have archives, and that they don't have access or the wherewithal to make arrangements to bring it someplace. And so much is lost. But I was fortunate with a few occasions that I could, and I knew someone with a car. You know, if you have a car in New York, you're a different class than a lot of us. And it was a privilege to be able to save things for the Lincoln Center, but also for the Fales Library at NYU and other little repositories. No, thank you for reminding me. I would have forgotten.
Thank you so much, Augusto, for that response and for that question, Kirsten. Our next question comes from the audience, and this audience member is asking, or writes, you've described yourself as a Chinese-Spanish-Filipino orphan raised on the streets of Hell's Kitchen. How do you think your Filipino heritage has shaped the way you move through the world as an artist and as a person?
Well, knowing what is in my bloodstream is one thing, but also being accepted as a street queen on Christopher Street is the mystique and mystery. Since I don't know any other language, I had to make up things. And that's why Anna May Wong was very important, because I mythologized her and I identified. I mean, there were kids. I was always in special ed classes because I was sensitive and so forth. And that really, it was like a detention class, but I loved it because all the challenged people or misfit kids that didn't fit in, is that it was more like music appreciation, is that play music and give them crayons and they could color or do what you have. And that I know at one place, it was a Catholic institution, and the nun would say, "Oh, Augusto, you colored neatly." And I thought, oh, such praise. My color crayon went to the line, but not over. And other people would make fun, is that you're supposed to be free as an artist. And they would draw the crayon all over the place. And I thought, gee, I wish I could be that free and not rigid. It's like I followed the lines. That it sounds a little boring. And I was conservative and boring.
Thank you so much for that response. Our next question is going to come from Chloe.
Thank you so much, Augusto and CJ, for this conversation, which has been such a pleasure to listen to.
You're too young to know what this means. That's the voice, reference points.
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. I have a question for you. I note that the press release for the show refers to you as an artist, as an activist, as an archivist, as a muse, as a caretaker, as a friend. It also refers to you as a witness. And I wonder what the role of witnessing plays for you in your work.
What witness is living the whole journey and absorbing all the wonderful people, like I knew real characters, as street people are a variety of from more than A to Z, and that the experience and hearing of their life stories and what have you is just gee whiz. And it all journeys down through activism and sit-ins and all these things. And with gay activism, there were 5 meetings a week. There's subcommittees, and I was a worker ant. And there were times we were showing up at a demonstration, and someone would shove a placard with a banner, and I'd be holding it, what have you. And I didn't really know what was on the banner, but I know it was a positive protest. And there were people, we did a sit-in in places or in front of businesses, and people were photographing us, and they said the FBI. And I said, why would they want our photographs? We are the enemy. That had to say, we're dangerous. And I said, we are? I didn't think we were. We were just protesting our rights. But I mean, all the people who were taking pictures, I realized later they were part of the police or the FBI, what have you. But I was younger then. They can't identify me.
Thank you so much for that answer.
Okay.
Our next question is going to come from Magli. Magli, if you want to unmute.
Hi, Agosto and CJ. Thank you for such an amazing conversation.
Smile.
Thank you. I was very curious about how you've seen the lowercase art world change. I've been thinking a lot about this Fran Lebowitz quote where she says that pre-AIDS epidemic, the audiences to shows like the New York City Ballet were spectacular because the people in the audiences knew just as much as the people who made the ballet. So I'm very curious to know how you've witnessed engagement change through and after the AIDS epidemic within the art world.
Well, yes. Well, very early, I was also an opera queen. That was a little snotty and refined, but the standing room at the Old Met on 39th Street, you'd meet fellow travelers. And one of the wonderful people I chatted with was Lola Pasalinsky, who was one of the original Charles Ludlam's Ridiculous Theatrical Company. She and her partner, Linda Chapman, who was associate director of the New York Theater Workshop during that time, they've been together 45 years. And Lola is going to celebrate her 90th birthday, and Linda is going to be 75. And for our community to know there is commitment and a life together with positivity and lots of creative input to the greater culture.
Thank you, Augusto.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, Augusto, we have one more question from the audience. Did you ever encounter other Filipino or Asian queer performers in the downtown scene of the 60s through 80s? And how were those identities received in that environment?
Oh, it's my turn?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. That's a very good question, because even in gay liberation and all that, there were very few Asians. And that what was a great joy is Nicky Parizo, who a full Filipino. He speaks Tagalog, and he's been to the Philippines several times, and he's been with La Mama for 50 years. He is part of the dance. He's a dance curator, and he has at the club a show also. But he worked very early with Jeff Weiss, and Nicky is so talented. He can play the piano, sing, also read music, which is also a gift, and knows how to act fabulously. And so he really is the prize Asian from downtown to me, and he's still going strong. He's very modest.
Thank you so much for those answers, Augusto. Before we close out the show, you had mentioned that you wanted to say something to close us out.
Oh, did I say that?
Now's the time.
Oh, I think I've said what I wanted to, but really to the audience out there, individually and collectively, all the things we went through and the challenges, you have challenges now that I don't know if I have the strength to deal with. So be true to yourself, believe in yourself, and you have a voice. And just with the purity in your heart and your talent, try to do this, and you'll connect and be appreciated for other people who are trying the same things. So God bless you.
Thank you so, so much, Agosto, for that. Thank you both, CJ and Agosto, for this vibrant dialogue. Thank you, Sam and Mara from Gordon Robichaux, for their support in preparing for today's event. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art and Tiger Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. A donation directly supports our writers, production staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with S.C. Klumpner, Jasmine Katatsu, Shamika Chantel Johnson, and Deborah Cullen Morales on the event of Press and Pull, 2 Decades at the Robert Blackburn Printmaking Workshop at the James Gallery, CUNY Graduate Center. And now, as is Rail tradition, you can turn on your microphone and say hello and goodbye as you leave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Augusto.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.